Hey guys, it's Joe, your editor for this episode. I need to apologize ahead of time. The audio for this episode isn't the best, but the discussion that we had with Matt was totally worth keeping it because the whole show had a really great vibe and it was super fun to record. I hope you guys have as much fun listening to it as we had recording it. And with that, here we go.
Hello, Internet, and welcome back to Makers on Tap, the podcast where some makerspace directors drink and talk about making stuff and maker culture. I'm your host, Aaron, and who do we got here tonight?
Got Joe.
And Chris.
And Matt Stultz.
Welcome, Matt. You've been a hard person to get a hold of onto this podcast.
Yes. Yeah, and I can say the same in the other direction now. So
Until you worked, and then we ignored you. We're like, we don't want you now that you want us.
Yeah, we only want what we can't have.
All about that chase.
It's the same everywhere, right?
Right.
What's
So
everybody
yeah,
think
I'm
tonight?
excited to finally be here.
Hell yeah, hell yeah.
I'm drinking Gatorade.
That's a good thing to be
Responsible,
drinking.
Responsible.
I have Dank Meme, the Gatorade of beers.
I am rolling with some root beer and a little bit of vodka.
You don't have adult milkshakes tonight?
No, I ran out of ice cream. So I'm
Quarantine
going
problems, man.
to,
What exactly are adult milkshakes? Are you like vodka in a milkshake, or
a little bit of like butterscotch schnapps, and like get a little bit of caramelly taste. So it just tastes like a milkshake, and it's great.
there you go.
But it's a little boozy. It's a little good.
There is a hamburger place. I think it's called, if I remember correctly, it's called Burgatory in the Pittsburgh area.
What a great name.
Yeah,
Love it.
and they do boozy adult milkshakes also, like all different varieties of them,
Ooh, okay.
and excellent hamburgers.
See,
It all
that's
sounds
that.
good.
All right, we'll jump right into this. What is one of your travel rituals? Because for me,
Hang on, what's Aaron
whenever
drinking?
well, yeah, Aaron, what are you drinking?
I have Goose Island 312.
Hell yeah.
It's simple and solid.
Headache in a bottle for me. I don't know why.
Okay, so travel rituals. For me, I always try and find a local burger place that's rated high and go to that whenever I'm traveling. Do you
I
have anything like that?
a little bit. I do really enjoy, and I had a big conversation for a while about actually like starting kind of an app about this or some kind of website about this with Claudio. You guys obviously know Claudio. That I really kind of enjoy regionalized fast food. Not just like a individual burger restaurant, but like fast food chains that may not be everywhere. And so like we had a little bit of a discussion about this last Saturday on the 1440, right? About like you guys having Culver's out there and we don't have Culver's. And you know, when I'm on my way now from Chicago driving into Murph, it's stopping at Jimmy John's because I don't have a Jimmy John's anywhere near me, and I love their roast beef sandwiches. But yeah, I really enjoy regionalized fast food. You know, typically when you're traveling and on the run anyways, like you kind of need to often eat fast food, you know, for as much as you try to avoid it. And so I like to kind of hit up the places that are not everywhere. And if I can find a Jack in the Box, it's over. Like that's where I'm headed.
So let me guess, you got like what, like a Rallies around you? Is that what you got?
No, we don't have Rallies. Like actually here. So I've just recently moved to Maine. I moved here in October, November. And I have yet to find anything that's like really specific here. There's an ice cream chain around called Fielder's Choice that has excellent ice cream, but like they don't have regular food. And I've yet to find any kind of like very specific here. The one thing is, and I was discussing this on Friday night's call, like I am deep in the heart of Dunkin' Donuts. Like in New England, it is hard to go anywhere and not find a Dunkin' Donuts. Like they're more prevalent than McDonald's around here. And so, yeah, that's kind of, if I were to say any kind of regionalized fast food for this area, it would definitely be Dunkin' Donuts.
I feel like that's a lot on the East Coast. Like anytime I'm traveling East Coast, going to like either Maine, New York, even Philly, like all of it's Dunkin'.
Yeah, I would agree, but the deeper you get into New England, the more it's just like Dunkies rules.
Fair enough.
The land of the dunk.
And again, you get up here in Maine, and it's like a lot of the other stuff starts to fall off. You don't see, a lot of other things that, we when we were moving, we were like, wait, how far is it going to be to a Chipotle? Like, maybe this is a bad decision. And so,
look, I'm a crunch wrap now, boy.
Yeah, there is a Chipotle in Portland, but that's 40 minutes away. So,
you have Moe's?
I don't know. I don't like Moe's at all.
Oh man, you got to get the wrong Doug. It's so good. It's like a crunch wrap with steak in it.
Interesting.
You can get crunch wraps with steak in them, right?
What's that?
Taco Bell.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not like, it's like fake steak that's like plastic. That doesn't count, Aaron.
Moe's put some spice in all of their stuff, and I don't know exactly what it is, but I'm just like, no, I don't like the flavor of Moe's.
Okay, that's legit.
That's fair. There's a brand out in Iowa that I'm trying to remember the name of that is like Moe's and Chipotle that does something with their salsa, and it just completely. Normally, I love salsa, but it completely turns me onto it.
Yeah. Well, if you ever find yourself, I don't actually know if they still exist, but if you ever find yourself down in Texas, there's a place called Mission Burrito, and I really like Mission Burrito.
Mission Burrito is pretty good.
Where I lived in Houston, we actually had a Mission Burrito in the building that I lived in, and that was dangerous.
I'm surprised you still like it.
Yeah, it was really good.
That must be very good.
Yeah, I had at one point it was Mission Burrito, Jamba Juice, and we had an ice cream place in the building, and it was just like, why do I ever need to leave? Like, this is.
Yeah, that's.
I think my travel thing was always finding good sushi places, especially when I was traveling for work and they were paying for it, and I could go spend $60 on sushi of somebody else's money.
You save up that per diem, man. You don't eat breakfast, or you find a hotel that is offering free breakfast. Then you save your breakfast money, you skip lunch, and then you get that like 5-star sushi place.
Yes.
It's like that was the game taught to me, like, because I didn't have a job with per diem before this one. So immediately, like, when I got in, they're like, all right, listen up here, newbie. You're gonna learn the game.
Buy your own breakfast. It's fine. It'll be $5.
Very much like, look, we all go out late at night, and you're going to come with us. So you got to learn the game now.
Yeah, that's real. Like, with on the road techs, they play that late night game hard.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I've been out with some guys that are like, my per diem tonight is all liquid, and I'm gonna eat an appetizer. And
you just got to go to a place that has dinner.
You just ate or drank $70 in alcohol and ate nachos. Are you gonna be okay? Very okay.
The amount of times that like techs have taken me out to like Longhorn Steakhouse and we've just like loaded up on booze is too many times to count.
The last trip that I went on work-wise, the guy was like, it's been a long time since we took any guests out, because I was like a guest consultant. He's like, it's been a long time since I took a guest out and put it on the company card. How's Texas Day Brazil sound tonight? I was like, yes, we should do that. It was like $400 for 3 people. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, it didn't take long for joining the Prusa crew for them to figure out that like having me out and about and me not really drinking was very advantageous to their ability to drink even more and still get home safely. And so,
yeah, I noticed that at IRF.
Yeah, I mean most of the time at IRF, I think they were just drinking close to the hotel anyway, so like walking
That's
was
true.
easy. But
the turtle was pretty close.
But yeah, Maker Faire Orlando, it was nice to have me be able to drive around.
Sorry, Matt.
Oh no, it's fine. I'm used to it. It's better than.
So what's everybody been working on? Any fun projects?
A little bit. I think all of us in this time, it's kind of hard to be like, oh, we're not just like working on PPE stuff or, stuff like that. And so, but, some of the sanity's sake, trying to break out onto something else. So I am kind of currently working on 3D printed accessories to hydroponics to start doing like hydroponic lettuce in the house, mostly lettuce. We also got some broccoli and cucumbers and tomatoes and things like that. But the main focus is on leafy greens because we like salads and we like lettuce on our tacos and on our hamburgers and all that kind of stuff. And getting that from the grocery store right now is not the best. And so, even going to the grocery store, getting delivery from the grocery store, the quality just isn't really there. And so why not grow it yourself? And we have really nice southern facing windows inside of our house. And, I could potentially go and just plant it outside in a garden, but I want to, have the ability to potentially like keep this going on through the winter, especially if
in Maine.
the kind of, well, in Maine, and also like, especially if the situation kind of persists here, there's a second kind of comeback on the COVID side of things of, in the fall or into this winter that we have to watch out for. Being able to continue growing food inside my house makes a lot of sense. And so going the hydroponic route makes a lot of sense in that direction too. So I've been watching a bunch of YouTube videos and reading a bunch of blogs and, other various resources. And now I'm starting to kind of, build the things necessary. And I have seeds sprouting. I've got little tiny baby plants coming up. And so within the next week, those will kind of go into their hydroponic solutions. And, hopefully we will be off to the races.
What kind of system are you looking at making?
Interesting.
Yeah, so I looked at a lot of different things, and there's the Dutch buckets, and there's all kinds of like troughs and aeroponic stuff, and this, that, and the next thing, and I ended up choosing something that's called the crack key method, because it's kind of especially for leafy greens, it may not be the best solution. We'll have to see for like the tomatoes and the cucumbers and the broccoli and stuff. Although I have seen some videos on YouTube of people using crack key for these other things. But the crack key is a little bit of a set it and forget it system, and it doesn't require pumps or bubblers or anything like that. Which means there's less things to leak, there's less things to break, and if you're not having a lot of great success, it's less things to spend money on, and then find out like, hey, this isn't something really for me. So the crack key method is basically you have your growing medium, often rock wool. You have your little baby plant inside of that, and you put in something that's called a net cup, which basically looks like a cup with lots of holes in it. And then you suspend that net cup down into a bucket, for lack of a better word, a container of nutrient-filled water. And that container should hypothetically contain enough nutrient water for the entire life cycle of that plant.
Okay.
So it starts fairly filled to the top, and as the plant is sucking that liquid nutrients up in, it starts reducing the amount of liquid in the entire container. But that starts to create an air gap that gives the roots the aeration that the roots need. And the plant just continues developing more roots to suck up the nutrients and takes up the entire bottom of the container with its roots. But that air gap prevents any of your kind of root rot issues of having, too wet of roots. So, I've watched tons of videos. There's, tons of blogs out there and everything else. People seem to be very hot on this method. Some people say that they get, better results with bubblers and aeration and things like that. But it's not such better results, in my opinion, that it doesn't make sense to just not have that stuff and skip it and still get plenty of lettuce, out of something that literally is, take it, put it in the pot, and then walk away for a month. And that's it. So, and a lot of it, I could go out and I could buy the stuff, the pots and, the net cups and everything else, but that's another thing that I either have to wait forever for Amazon to deliver right now, or I have to, go out to some kind of store and risk being, out in the world. I've got 3D printers, so why not design all the pots and everything else to hold everything, and the net cups and everything else. So, because 3D prints aren't necessarily the most, watertight things all the time. I mean, we try, but it's not always the most reliable. The first thing that I designed is also one of the, I've been joking, one of the more dangerous things I've ever designed, which is a bottle cutter. So you put a 2-liter bottle inside of it and push it down onto a razor blade and spin the bottle, and it forces it to have an exact cut, size bottle. And it works great. And then I'm going to 3D print sleeves that go around those that you don't, the 2-liter bottle's clear, of course, right? And you don't want a lot of light coming in, because then that'll grow algae inside, and it'll also sunburn your roots. So I'm printing a sleeve that the 2-liter bottle will sit down inside of, and then, a lid.
I made this exact same thing 3 years ago.
There you go. And if it was on Prusa printers, I wouldn't have to be designing it myself right now. Oh, the segue.
Speaking of, are you going to be sharing these models when you're finished? Because
absolutely. And
I'm bored and have 3D printers.
Right. Yeah, so I'm going to start sharing them right away, this stuff. I was trying to decide, what's the best way to necessarily do the release, because part of me would feel guilty releasing everything and then be like, oh, yeah, my results were horrible, nothing seemed to grow, I convinced you guys to, do these kind of things and it didn't work. But I think I'm going to release stuff with, a little bit of a caution and a caveat of, hey, this is an experiment, I'm trying this out, but if you want to play along at home, come join me in this process, and let's see if we can make, good hydroponic growing systems that people can feed themselves nicely at home right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've been interested in that for a long time. Back even when I was in college, I made a deep water culture system.
Nice.
In my parents' basement, and it was just a Rubbermaid tote, and I got 1/2-inch pink insulation foam.
Yeah.
And that was my raft. So all my net pots just sat in a raft.
Yeah.
So as the water, evaporated or got soaked up, it would just float on top of the current level of water, and I just had a bubbler in it.
Right. So a lot of people do crack key in the exact same way, except instead of floating the foam on top, they just put the foam so it's a lid on the top of the bucket. But then still just drop the net pots into the foam and everything else, and so yeah.
Neat.
I've also been toying around with the idea for a startup for shipping container hydroponic gardens.
Nice.
As self-contained ecosystems.
Yeah.
Combining my IoT experience but also my hydroponics interests. But you could make self-contained ecosystems to grow specific plants that are environment like 100% environment controlled.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can drop them off anywhere you can get free or cheap rent to drop a container off at.
Right, and because you have the container, you could control.
So
you could control
full
things
on
like
shipping containers. Okay.
Yeah, because you have the container, you'd be able to control things like not only the growing the growing environment as in light, but you'd also be able to control the temperature and the humidity and everything else inside. So.
Yeah.
And shipping containers are remarkably cheap.
Yeah.
If you have the land to have one dropped on, it's like $1,500.
Yeah.
Delivered.
No shit, really?
Yes.
And there's already like commercial infrastructure to transport them.
Yeah.
Like there's entire industries of just transporting containers around. So like
there's a place 30 minutes from us. I've got quotes for them. You could get I was looking at a 10 by 40 container. It was going to be $1,800 delivered, but for a 40-foot container, you have to have 100 foot of straight runway because the truck backs up and then drives out from underneath it, and I don't have that.
Interesting.
That's I was like in negotiations to buy 2 containers and make a shop out of them back in October, and then they informed me of that, and I said, "Well, crap, we got to kill this plan."
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many things that like you'd want to do with shipping containers, right? Like, you see all the people who like turn shipping containers into small offices or like, small extra like guest houses and bury shipping containers and turn them into underground crazy bunkers, and it's just like it's
not a great idea.
Yeah.
You theored into it.
You looked into it.
I did look into it, and it's a terrible idea.
Are they not watertight enough?
You're not designed for...
Yeah, the side forces, yeah. But, there's just so many people that, so many things that people have done with them. And it's just interesting to see this kind of like start out, base shell of a construction set kind of, right? I went out to Woods Hole, NOAA. Is it NOAA? Yeah, at Woods Hole, the National Oceanographic Institute. I think so. But anyways, I went out to Woods Hole and went on a tour of their facility, and they actually are doing like shipping containers where they get a shipping container and turn it into an entire like science research pod. And so they gut everything out, and then they kind of build it out with insulation inside. So wherever they're going, it's not going to be too cold on the ship or, anything like that. They run all the cabling through it, and like the kind of corrugated sides of the shipping container make it easy to have like channels for running cabling through that have spacing, and then they, put the insulation around and things like that. They cut holes in the sides and put doors and put windows in them and everything else. And then like they have this pod that is, specifically designed for the experiments that need to go on, or, a specific function. And then they can just pick that up and put it on one of their research vessels and, take it around, do whatever's needed, and then show back up and take it back off and store the shipping container research pod. And the next time it needs to go out, they don't have to like rebuild all those resources or set up an entire lab on the ship. They just pick it up and put it back on a ship.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
which
was
often
really neat.
in research, resources just get thrown out at the end of an experiment or whatever.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like this was only for things that, they knew were going to be, ongoing, long-going, kind of things, but wouldn't necessarily be on the same boat or have to be on the boat for long periods of time. And it was just easier than, like, retrofitting the systems on the boat every time they needed to take this thing out.
Yeah. That's super cool.
Yeah.
Huh.
That was neat. It was a neat place to check out. And they're doing cool things with 3D printing, which is one of the reasons I was there. And so it was interesting to see them, prototyping things for the stainless steel versions of them that were super expensive to make because, materials that you need to make stuff out of to be able to take it out to sea and have it survive all the salt water and everything else was just, too expensive to prototype in that stuff all the time. So they would prototype 3D printing and then eventually, mill the real things and take them out. So it was neat. I was there with a bunch of students who didn't get it. And so it was a little sad.
That's the worst.
Yeah, we were kind of trying to work on like, hey, do you guys want any of these guys for an internship kind of thing? And they were like, we would take some for interns. And my students were just not interested at all. And I was like, can I come be an intern here? Like,
yeah. I feel like you don't get how cool things are until you're like 30.
Yeah. I'm the teacher and I want to be an intern.
Yep. I regularly have that thing like the interns get to do all the cool crap. Can I just do your job and still get paid like a non-intern? Have you guys been working on anything cool? Aaron, Chris?
Aaron, go for it.
Yeah. So I've been making some really good progress on the access control system this week. I'm very excited about it. I've essentially caught up to where I was before I redid the entire platform that I was doing. Originally, it was an ESP32 based microcontroller. Now it's on an Orange Pi SBC. So it's, like quad core little ARM chip.
Is that faster than the ESP32?
I mean, a little bit faster, but I mean, it runs full Linux. Was kind of was kind of the superpower of it.
Okay.
For only like $1 or $2 more, like you're running, you get a full SBC instead of a microcontroller.
Yeah.
But you also have the headaches and all the overhead of all the Linux side of things too. But
yes and no. I mean, this is gonna be an IoT product, and there's no good way to get certificates on a microcontroller yet, reliably. And that's kind of where I approached it. That and like I have so much more room for cool shit now on this thing than with a microcontroller. Like it's gonna run a little. It's an Orange Pi, so it's got like 512 megs of RAM, and I've got it running currently JavaScript to control the GPIO pins, and that was I did that because I've been looking into like AWS AppSync, which they use for mobile apps, but it's a real-time, offline compatible database. So the idea is it can actually because the idea with this is you scan a badge, and then it will trigger a relay if that user is allowed to use that machine or not, and then it will log how long they used it and it's whatnot, and it will log the machine rate and usage. But let's assume that you have a unreliable internet connection. One of the big design challenges was how do I handle that? And they've already got this product that does that, but it's mostly targeted towards like mobile app development, which I'm not really doing, but it's a Java library or a JavaScript library. I'm like, well, can I control the GPIO pins with JavaScript? Because like everything else I'm going to be doing on this project is going to be JavaScript anyways. And then a lot of synergies kind of came into place because like the back end is probably going to end up being JavaScript at some point because I'm planning on doing a lot of AWS stuff with it, and a lot of that mostly has JavaScript compatibility. And this will allow me to just have one language do the entire stack.
Which is nice because working things back and forth between multiple languages just starts to become a huge headache.
Yeah, my current project at work, I'm dealing with Ansible, Python, Java, Apache Spark, like multiple technologies, and the amount of context switching I got to do in my mind sucks. So that'll be nice. But I actually, just before we jumped on the call, I just wrapped up kind of like the final proof of concept wiring. So I have like the Orange Pi set up with the relay and the level shifter and my badge reader, and I got it to actually trigger the buzzer on the badge reader, and I got it to trigger the relay. And so that was through the entire workflow, through the entire wiring of it. So I'm really excited because that is all I need to actually flesh out the rest of the project. So it's all breadboarded, so I'm going to start soldering it together so it's actually nice and rigid, and I'm not going to have a problem with loose connections while I develop.
Yeah.
But I'm awfully excited now.
So
awesome.
the architecture of this, just out of curiosity, so it sounds like you're running at least some form of the database on board the Orange Pi itself. So will that be syncing back to a master database where access control is at? Okay.
Yeah, so that's what I was originally going to do. I was always planning on having like a cloud backend. So I've been doing a lot of AWS development at work, so it's going to be mostly AWS for the backend. So I was going to kind of do it, from scratch as far as like the middleware and sending the data from the device to the cloud. But I've been recently looking into AWS AppSync, which kind of does all that for you, where it's a GraphQL layer, which is another thing I wanted to use. But what it does is I just say, this is the kind of data that I want from the database, please give me it. And then it does all of that translation for you, whereas I would essentially have to write a whole REST API to do that otherwise. And also with AppSync, as of last year, they've added that real-time database functionality to where there's a bit of a cache locally on the device of stuff that I've already queried and stuff that I'm already using. So now I have this nice little local cache of stuff only that machine cares about. And if it were to lose internet connectivity, it can still log to that little cache. And once the internet comes back, it has built-in merge conflicts. So it will actually see, if my machine wants to merge some data and something else one that was merging the same data, it will do that timeline conflict resolution for me. So the whole idea is that that's all seamless and done for me. And that was the whole design challenge I didn't want to deal with. Because in the end, it's like $4 per million requests. So it's like, that's cheap.
Yeah. So is this a potential vulnerability though, that say I'm a user and I know that my access to something has been turned off, I go and disconnect the device from being able to see the internet, and I know I've scanned into that device before, but now I disconnect it from the internet and I ensure that I badge into that device again, and it's authenticating me off of its already downloaded credentials.
Yeah. It's possible.
Yeah.
It's that's a whole thing with this whole project was, I need to draw a line of what's good enough, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like nothing's going to be perfect or foolproof.
Yeah.
So what I've been approaching this is I'm trying to set it up so it's part of a good security system.
Yep.
Part of a complete breakfast. Like it's not going to be the whole thing. But if you have this combined with a video surveillance system, and as long as the times are somewhat synced, then you should be mostly covered. Because the idea is I'm trying to handle a lot of the non-obvious security vulnerabilities. So normally, so it's an RFID badge scanner, which, you can buy a skimmer for $15. But to get around that, I've added two-factor authentication. So now it's a badge plus PIN code. So I found an RFID reader that has a built-in PIN code grid on it. So now that's a non-obvious thing that would have been a vulnerability. I'm trying to get down to it to where they'd have to physically alter the device to get around it, and then that would become a destruction of makerspace property at that point.
Right. Yeah.
And as long as you have a surveillance system, then you can be like, hey, someone cut the security. So there's steel zip ties with serial numbers on them.
Yep.
And I'm planning on using those to keep it closed. So if you need to access it, so essentially the machine's power cord goes into this little box, like a lockable box, and then so the device becomes like the switch for that. Not necessarily the on switch, but it allows the machine to be turned on. But it's going to be locked with the steel zip tie with a serial number. So then as long as your director writes down that serial number somewhere, if somebody cuts it or tries to replace it, it's going to be a different serial number. And then they can say, okay, something's happened. Let's go back and check things.
this is something I've often talked about is, especially trying to build security things or things with some level of security in them for hacker spaces is just like building it to the worst audience. Like if they want, this is the exact kind of crew that like this is what we're into. This is what we're we're trained for to some degree, and everything is like, how do we bypass these things? Like this is these are the fun puzzles that get all of our minds absolutely working. And so
I never thought about it as a challenge.
Well, right, and so like you kind of have to design things to the point of like, this is good enough, and once you've gone past this, like anyone who's bypassing it, like we've done our best job. And at that point, if they're going through that level of effort to get past it, like just get them out, because
exactly.
They're not.
We had a similar scenario years ago at our space. Someone had tripped the e-stop on our mill, and then we didn't have a key. He didn't have a key to reset it, so he just bypassed the e-stop and rewired it. That's worse.
Using a key to e-stop to keep people out of it that weren't certified.
Yeah. So this aims to fix that.
Those ID'd zip ties are highly commonly used in the shipping industry. Back to kind of talking about shipping containers too, but the shipping industry. So that way that the contents of the container haven't been messed with. So I
didn't know you could like just buy those as a person.
Yeah,
I mean they're on AliExpress.
Of course they are.
That's like my favorite place
surprised?
to shop now. I'll just sit down with some beers and just like browse AliExpress and Alibaba for fun shit. It's great.
Yeah, that's
not Wish. You don't want any toenail peeler things, weird butt prosthetics.
Dude, it's the ear cleaners. That's what's been getting me recently.
I haven't seen that one.
It's the camera with an ear cleaner at the end of it, and it's like, plug it into your phone. Yup.
terrifying.
Wish is such a weird place, man.
Oh, man.
Such a weird place.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of that, just being able to shop around. I mean, this to the same extent though, like you go to the electronics markets in Shenzhen, and it's like literally walking through those websites, like, because that's where they're getting everything from, right? And it is just absolutely nuts. When I went to Shenzhen in 2018, it was one of those things that you kind of realize, like Blade Runner is not that far off. It's just not set here. It's it was just so like different reality, like walking through those markets, seeing little tiny stalls where guys are just sitting there chain smoking and taking apart iPhones and then like rebuilding new iPhones out of the parts of other iPhones and packaging them up to like resell them, and the same with like laptops and everything else. And they're just like in little tiny cramped little spaces that are smaller than any cubicle you've ever worked in, but they're like refurbing electronics that we think are so high tech, and there's just cigarette butts absolutely everywhere, and you're just like, wow. Yeah. It is extreme, like cyberpunk dystopian like craziness. It is awesome. And then you walk outside and all the buildings are covered with LED arrays and like have like giant 6-story tall advertisements running on the side of them, and it feels like the holograms in Blade Runner or Altered Carbon or something like that. And so
I really need to go to Shenzhen.
Shenzhen and just anywhere in Tokyo, dude. Like most of Tokyo, Shinjuku or Shibari or anyways. I'm forgetting all my names. I'm having one of those nights. Yeah, both those are fun. I got to go out there for work at one point to Shenzhen, and it was amazing. It was really fun.
And yeah, other than the fact that like you realize that like cash doesn't even work there, like WeChat is the only way. It wasn't as bad in Beijing as it was in Shenzhen, but in Shenzhen it's just like, how can you get anything done if you don't have WeChat and can use, you know, payments through WeChat? And that is not the easiest thing to set up if you don't actually live there. And they're even, I guess they're even making that harder. Like eventually somebody gave me this red package or something. So it's a way that they sent me money, and that because they already had an account set up and they had money set up, they could send me money. And because they sent me money, I now had money in my account. And that was awesome when that finally happened. But I'm hearing that like they're restricting that now too, and you can't even do that.
Yeah, they want to make WeChat like region locked, which is really bullshit.
Yeah, because like you can't even like ride the subway in Shenzhen without like having it. Like it's an absolute nightmare.
Huh.
Yeah, if you're actually interested, like look up travel advice for going, because like it's not easy to get around. There's tricks, but
Have to go alone without my family, and that's always hard.
Let me know, Joe. Let me know.
I would go with you.
Yeah.
If you called me and you're like, Joe, I'm going to Shenzhen. This is when. You could come. I would go.
It would be. It would be so much fun.
It would be. Oh my god. That would be super fun.
So, I mean, it's not going to be anytime soon at this point, but
I don't know. That might be like the better place to be right now.
Yeah.
They at least have a handle on things.
yeah, it's the flight. It's the flight there that, or any flights period that.
It might be private. Like,
True.
there's just ghost planes flying around.
Yeah.
Like, this is the time to do it. Or not.
Yeah. Oh well.
Have you made anything lately?
oh man, currently not a whole lot. Mainly the thing that I was working on was I got to work with this new software that is called Armorsmith. And it is a piece of software that was specifically created for cosplayers. And essentially what you do is you put in all your body measurements, and then you can import STL files or Pepicura files, and then it will match them to your body so you can see how you need to scale them to make it fit your body.
Neat.
That's super cool.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm getting ready to build my heavy Mandalorian. And so I want like all the armor pieces to work, and the jetpack and the heavy infantry rifle to work as well. And so I essentially just threw the STL in there because somebody had made a really high quality STL, and I was immediately able to see like, oh, this is not going to work. I need to scale it up. And so I started scaling it up and scaling each side, seeing what worked with what. And I was like, oh, okay, so I just need to scale it up by about 10%, and that's it, and then it will work. And so I was able to see that, and it fit around all the weird parts of my body and whatnot, because the model is me. You take like 27 measurements or something like that, and it's all across your body, and then it like you input that, and it gives like a fully accurate rendering of your body with the tooling. It's not the most perfect thing, I will say that, because like sometimes it doesn't like to rotate pieces to where they're actually how they're supposed to fit, but it gives you an approximation to be able to go like, okay, if I scale it like this, it should work. So that's been really fun to work with, actually, is just kind of messing around with that.
If you rotate the STL to something like Mesh Mixer or NetFab, where you can like actually change the STL to origin, would that fix that problem?
It might. I didn't think about that. I would have to. I have Mesh Mixer. Yeah, that might work.
All right. We should try that and report back.
Yeah. No. It costs about six. I think. Let me make sure. I think it costs $30. Armor.
Still not bad. If you're going to commit to a project like that, you're going to commit several $100s in filament and stuff.
Yeah.
So, like, having a $30 insurance policy, the things might be okay.
Yeah, and that was the cool thing was the guy that I ended up buying the STLs from. He put like testing fits on it, which is really cool. He made like this wireframe that you print, and then that tells you how it should fit on you. So without having to print an entire like. The big thing that I had was I have the helmet from The Mandalorian. And that did not fit me right off the bat, just dropping the STL on the printer. So with this, I was able to see, like, oh, I just need to scale it up about, like, 15%, and then it'll be able to fit me just fine. So, yeah, it's been nice already. Yeah, so it is $30, and, yeah. It's just called Armor Smith. It's a pretty cool tool. I've liked it so far. It's pretty close to your normal CAD/CAM kind of software, rotating and throwing things on it, whatnot. But if you have a chance, check it out. It's pretty cool. It basically, if you want to scale anything to a human you, it's a great thing for that. If you have that in mind with anything that you might be creating. So, and then it just spits out the file and ready to throw it into your slicing software.
That's awesome. I desperately want like something like Pepakura, but allows you to import STLs and get patterns for like fabric out. I find that Pepakura is really kind of focused towards paper, or at least every time I've used it. And so it's kind of having these ideas that like, oh, you're going to be cutting and gluing these sections together. And it doesn't really give you like the seam allowances and seam lines and everything else if you were going to actually like sew or stitch something together. And I like, that's what I want. I want Pepakura for fabric where I can say like, you know, here I'm tossing in a teddy bear head, and it, you know, it tells me like, this is how to cut a bunch of pieces of fabric to make a teddy bear head, right? Or, you know, as the case of my Pepakura side of things of like, here, I've designed a 20-foot inflatable dome. Please tell me how to cut the fabric to make a dome correctly. And, yeah.
So we're currently having to try and figure that out in some way. We're not doing it with fabric though. We're doing it with foam.
Right.
So like we're having to figure out how to make translations with Pepakura for foam to work, and boy, has that been a struggle because it just doesn't really want to work with you.
Yep.
We're slowly figuring it out because like we've seen like some people have done it obviously and they're able to figure it out, but it's like nobody's made good content on how to do it. So we're trying to document the process while we're doing it and seeing if we can maybe come up with something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I call out my friend. Hey, Sam, remember how you said nobody wanted the software you were working on?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. I've seen it.
Wait, which Sam?
NASA Sam.
NASA Sam was working on a software like that?
No.
Okay. Nobody listens to our podcast. We're just a bunch of idiots talking to each other.
That's what we thought that one time.
Right.
People called us out on the internet directly.
That, and we had fans show up places. That's been interesting. That's been awesome. It's just been like, what are we doing? Like,
remember that time I didn't think people cared about my opinion on CNC controllers, and then we got called out on Maker Forums, and then that was fun. It was fun. Do that more.
I just brought you guys up. Oh yeah, again on last night's phone call because someone was talking about wanting to make an MPCNC, and I was like, don't make an MPCNC. Go listen to Makers on Tap, and they interviewed the guy who has a printable CNC that's better than the MPCNC, or at least Joe thinks so, and I'll take Joe's.
By mile.
Yeah, Joe's opinion.
I'm still planning on making that soon.
I have all the steel here. It's time.
Well, speaking of which, yeah, just what have you been working on?
Lord. The biggest thing I've been working on is my basement, and I'm so ready to stop working on my basement so I can get back to working in my basement and making cool shit. But I've had two big things happen this week that I was really excited about. One, I designed the Hemera mount for Chris's Raptor, and then I got really stalled up on the fan duct because, man, do I hate designing fan ducts.
That sucks.
Fan ducts suck. They are the least fun thing of the 3D printer. By far.
Yep.
That's why I'm using cooling tubes now.
Maybe you should use cooling tubes, Chris.
I mean,
You know, I gotta say, back in the I think it was the first wooden simple from Brooke. He had kind of an interesting, and I'm a little surprised that people haven't bothered with it again since, but he had an interesting little fan duct that was like a foldable, like plastic. Came flat pack, and then you would just fold the fan duct together, and there were 2 screw holes that mounted it on, and it wasn't bad at all, and like it just seems like one of those super simple things of like, you know, again, we all design printable fan ducts because we have printers, and you know, when you have a hammer, everything's a nail, but like, you don't need to have a printable fan duct, right? Like, you could laser cut a sheet of HDPE and fold that up into a fan duct pretty damn quick, and you know, have another option. And you know, I'm sure somebody is listening is going to be like, "Oh, that was the worst fan duct ever," but you know, it was a fan duct, you know. And
People on the internet.
well, right, and it worked. It blew the air in the direction that you wanted it to go, and I just loved that. Like, it was an easy, like, little fold up thing, and it was more flexible than, say, a printed fan duct. Most printed fan ducts, right? And so if it did run into something, it just kind of squished and folded away, and you didn't have it break because it ran into something.
fair enough.
Honestly, bending those cooling tubes did suck ass.
How did they work, though? I mean, it looked great.
So for those who, I guess I haven't explained this part yet. So on my new printer, the original fan ducts weren't that great. So Kyle redesigned them, but in the meantime, I designed an aluminum tube-based cooling duct, like tubing. So where I would just zip tie some aluminum tube to my hot end carriage, and then I bent the tubing to kind of snake it around and point 2 tubes, you know, at the nozzle, or you know, a couple millimeters below the nozzle, and then I just kind of wrapped them in some vinyl tubing, like aquarium tubing, just for aesthetics. But the idea then is now it's kind of, they're adjustable, like they bend a little bit. They have some compliance, so I was able to get them in the vicinity of the nozzle. And then I did a neat little water trick that Stephanie from our Discord forum said. Put a little bowl of water underneath your nozzle, and then turn the pump on, and you can see where the air is hitting, and then adjust it so then they meet right underneath the nozzle, you know, a couple meters below. And that worked really well. But to bend it, I had to borrow some external spring benders from Joe. So this was the hobby aluminum tubing, so it was like 5 32nd inch, or like, it's very tiny aluminum tubing that you get out of Metal Craft, whatever. I got it at my local Ace. They have a little cardboard thing that had them in there. but Joe had the spring benders, and it was a whole process to figure out how to actually bend them correctly without tearing the tubing. So I bought most of their supply, even though I needed 2 runs, because I'm like, I'm just going to fuck up so many times. I just want to learn how to do it right, so then I don't have to go back outside.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the whole thing, and it took a long time to bend those tubes, and it was a pain in the butt, but
Yeah, fan ducts suck.
it's working pretty well so far. But yeah, it's just a little. It's almost like a tube that's a spring, and you just slide the tube inside, and you bend it, and then the spring helps. It's supposed to help it from kinking when you bend it. And the secret seems to be wide radiuses.
Mm-hmm.
If you bend it at a 90, it tends to tear the tubing.
Yeah, if you go too much, you need a die bender that like actually bends along. But the other thing that I've been working on that I'm super excited about, and thanks Matt for being an enabler, is the Clipma, which is a BCN Sigma that is running Clipper. And one of the Clipper Discord people helped me figure out the config process to get the stock BCN board to take Clipper and actually like do a thing. But we've printed a cube, and the cube looked like crap, but it was really fast. Way faster than a stock Sigma. Holy crap. And it worked. So I have hope. And at the end of all that, so the plan for that is that we will get the Sigma working stock, probably with just manual bed leveling, because like the Sigma is just like assisted bed leveling. It's not actually an auto level. It doesn't actually correct. So we're going to get it working with manual bed leveling with both heads, and then do a pull request to the Clipper repo so that people can actually like access that config. And then after that, I've got some TH3D easy ables that I'm going to use to do mesh leveling on it. And then
Yeah, you do.
then we will accommodate the terrible bed that comes with the $3,000 or $4,000 BCN Sigmas. Because, man, that bed sucks. But it's a good printer if you can get a print to work. It's
Working
still
Sigmas
frustrating.
for all.
Yeah.
It'd be even better if it was a 1.75 machine too. So
You know, I have 2 that were given to me, and I didn't think either one worked. One of them turned out to be pretty close to working, but the other one, the hot ends are all screwed up, and it's just dying for some E3D hot ends with some Titan extruders.
I feel like it would be a pretty easy drop in to do so because of the way that the Bowden system is on it and how close that the stock hot ends are to V6s anyways.
They're longer. Both the hot end and the heatsink are longer, so you'd have to redo the cooling shrouds, which like you would end up doing anyway. Like the thing is, like that whole tool head assembly you would end up redoing anyway if you went to a standard V6, either the screw-in heatsink or a groove mount heatsink. Just because like you don't need the BC and cooling fan setup, which is just ridiculous anyway, and the part cooling fan is a really, really terrible design. Again, part cooling fans suck to design. So it would be a really easy fix to go to a different hot end configuration anyway. So
kind of looping back to, back on the cooling fans, suck to design and looping back to Aaron's discussion about his cooling tubes and everything else. Like, as he was discussing that and discussing, bending these aluminum tools and everything else, or these aluminum tubes, it kind of hit me that, like, and we do this as the 3D printing community, very, very sure. Like, we are constantly reinventing the wheel.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
We are constantly, like, kind of ignoring years and years and years of other industrial experience and things. And every once in a while we pull those things back in. But I'm just thinking about, like, flood coolants and mist coolants and everything else that are already used on CNC machines. And it's, basically the same thing as part cooling that we're already trying to do. And I'm just a little shocked that no one has made, like, a lock line adjustable cooling system for a part cooling like blower. Because Lockline makes it so easy for you to, move around and point a nozzle exactly where you need it to point. I think it's one of those things of lack of familiarity, because some of these things don't necessarily cross across, and then there's a little bit of no one else has done it, so maybe it doesn't work, and
Well, like Lockline, the main problem with Lockline is it's adjustable. So it's not the same every time.
Yeah.
And people get really picky about their consistency. But for like a scratch build or something that you're going to change tool heads on all the time, that's a great idea. I hadn't thought about that.
Well, I also, we've done 3D printed Lockline and things like that, and I wonder if you could just get it to be a little bit stiffer. So yes, it is adjustable, but there's a benefit to that.
Yeah.
But maybe make it so it's not necessarily flopping around. And this isn't like a normal CNC where you're potentially running it into things. Like, that your nozzle's always going to be above your thing, obviously curling aside, right?
Yeah.
But you don't necessarily have to worry about running your Lockline into something and moving it out of the way.
Alternatively, have you ever put too much air pressure into Lockline and have it explode in your face?
No. I haven't used it that much, so. But
that will make you see your life in front of you. For those that are wondering, 50 psi is that number. It'll just come apart in your hand. And, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, we're just talking low pressure, low pressure, high volume here, right?
Yes. Until you use your air compressor to cool your print, Sanjay. Yeah. No, so those have been the couple things that I've been excited about that I'm working on. I'm still working on the big CNC. It's kind of stalled. But it hasn't completely stalled. And Matt, I've come up with in my head a furniture design that I'm really, really jazzed about.
Awesome.
And I think if I stick with this design concept, I can keep most of the furniture to a 4-foot by 2-foot CNC, so it stays accessible.
Yeah.
But then you could still build big things.
That'd be great. I can't wait to see what you've come up with. Yeah, I think that's one of the interesting things is like how to use some of those design constraints and make cool stuff around that. Like, if you can fit something on like the bed of one of the larger like Shapeokos or X-Carves, it becomes automatically like more accessible because those are so prevalent out there. Like, I get not fitting the smaller ones. Like, it's hard to make furniture that fits on the smaller end size of an X-Carve or a Shapeoko. But the full, like the big ones, the meter by meter ones. If you can design a piece of furniture that somehow fits together and works on that, like, so many more people have access to that. And then you step that up of like, if you can design something around a 2-foot by 4-foot, all the more people have access to that. And then like 4-foot by 4-foot, like you start really getting into like, okay, I can build big things, but as long as no piece outstretches this, like there's more people who can do a 4-foot by 4-foot, and then you finally get up to 4x8s. The one downside of it is like the good plywood, right? Like good Baltic birch is primarily in 5x5 sheets, and so this is something that like has made me sad for a little while about my particular machine. Having a 4x8 is like I can't fit a 5x5 sheet on it and cut that entire sheet. And so, that's a recommendation for people. Even if you think most of the time you're going to be cutting plywood and you want a 4x8 machine, get a 5x8 machine, because then you can put good sheets of Baltic birch on it and cut that, and you can still cut full sheets of regular ply.
Yeah. Or get a 5x10 so you can cut 2 sheets of Baltic birch at the same time.
Yeah,
It's not
and-
that much bigger.
Yeah, and you can get the giant sheets of MDF, the 5x10 sheets of MDF, and put it inside of it too. And so, those things are just
really
insanely heavy.
Holy crap, are they heavy? I know the whole concept. Like when I'm done with my basement, my wife is moving down there too for her costuming and like all of that stuff, and I'm really excited to build out a workspace for her. And I was thinking about the space that they want and what they want to be able to do with the space, and how I could accommodate that quicker than finishing the 4x8 CNC. Like, it's going to get done. It's got to get done. It's got to get out of my way. But at the same time, I also want to be able to build this space out as quick as I can. And I've been building the 4x8 CNC out of LSL strand wood, which is like 2x4s made out of really thick OSB. It's super structural and super straight, and it doesn't look terrible because OSB has like that really cool pattern to it. And so then I built interlocking legs out of plywood that I cut on my 2-foot by 4-foot, and then built the actual top out of the LSL wood, and then mounted all my spoil board to it. And I was thinking there's no reason why that concept wouldn't work well for desks and workbenches. So I'm thinking through design ideas of how I'd want to do that, how I'd want to make it interlock well to keep desks and workbenches very sturdy and very square, without using cabling and stuff like I used on the router. So yeah, I'm excited about it. I think it'll be a neat concept. I think it'll work well. So
Yeah, and there's so much that you can do. When you start thinking about how all of those, those interconnects and how furniture comes together, and not just how traditional furniture comes together, but also how people are designing around CNC hinge or CNC joinery, and then where's the best place for that? A lot of people complain about CNC based furniture because people go too over the top with CNC joinery, and it's quite obviously like a CNC made thing. And so I think the interesting things is where you start like finding ways to marry all of it together, and also times where you're just like, pocket holes will just do. Like,
yeah.
I don't care, and a pocket hole jig is so fast and so easy. I don't have to make complex finger joints that are all milled out and everything else. Like, just get it together and pocket hole it. I will say, if you're not following Bill Young on if you're into CNC and you're not following Bill Young from ShopBot on Instagram, to see kind of like the different stuff that he's working on, he'll just like blow your mind with like some of the joinery techniques that he's working on and some of the like different stuff that he's working on CNC. So like he was doing like teddy bear joinery recently and like candy cane joinery, where it was like mortise and tenon or kind of things, but like the tenons that were coming through were shaped like candy canes on like bear heads and things like that. Because cool. You've got a CNC, you don't have to make squares and ovals, right?
Right.
He's been working on like I think at one point he was working on like lace up joinery, so things would kind of fit together, and then you would run like paracord or zip ties or things through things to like cool. lace them up, and then it could all be like unlaced and come back apart and things like that. And like he's constantly like blowing my mind with what all he's working on. So
yeah, I wasn't following him. I am now. But all of what you just said just brought up a thing that I've been wanting to bring up with you for a long time. And since I have you on the podcast and can hold you to things, I'm totally going to do it now. So you and I go to as many Maker Faire things as we can, right? I was at an art gallery 4 or 5 months ago, and I was looking at some relief prints that were done, and it was with a concept that I'd never heard of before. It was like a progressive relief, where like they make a print, and then like they'd start the print, cut some away, and then make a print, and then take the block back and then cut more away and make another print with a different color with the same block, and do this like repeated process. And I was like, I wonder. This was at the time when I was really excited about CNC block prints, and it's like, I wonder what that process would be like on a CNC, because you'd have to have very accurate fixturing, you'd have to have very accurate programming to do this, and also kind of in a way, like if you built inaccuracies into your system, that would build character that you wouldn't normally see in a CNC thing. And I was thinking about different ways to go about that. And then I was thinking about Maker Faire and Maker Fest. And I was thinking about this touring art exhibit of traditional art concepts that were done with digital.
Yeah. That'd be really great. I mean, I've done CNC block printing. So we did, I'm sure you're going in other directions on this too, but so we did the last Maker Faire New York, so Maker Faire New York 2018. My team and I from Ocean State Maker Mill, we made this thing that we refer to as Napland. So for any of you that have ever gone to Maker Faire, you're probably very aware of this, but any of you that haven't, Maker Faire is sights and sounds and craziness, and it's awesome and it's great, but there's no place to sit down. There's no place to just chill out for a second and be comfortable. And, you know, those of us that are working Maker Faire, even more so than even the people attending, like there just becomes a certain point where like you're just like, I need 5 minutes to just not be in any of this. And we, while running Moboat Paddle Battle, another, you know, previous thing that we had been working on and you know, running the booze and doing everything else, we were kind of like constantly lamenting this. And we said, okay, like, let's go out next year and do something different. Like, wouldn't it be great if there was a place at Maker Faire to take a nap? You know, some kind of nap zone, or, you know, I don't know, Napland. And then we realized that Napland sounded just like Lapland, which is an area of Finland that like all the like Santa Claus mythology all comes from, or a lot of it. And people literally ride around in sleighs pulled by reindeer in Lapland. Like to this day. And you know, the Northern Lights are out, and you know, it's kind of magical and beautiful and everything else. So we're like, okay, let's build an area to take a nap at Maker Faire. We can go into the dark room preferably, and create this thing that like is a place for someone to take a nap at Maker Faire, and make the entire thing look also a little bit like Lapland. So we built sleighs that were actually hammock stands. So we made hammock stands out of tubular steel and actually used a water jet to cut little brackets so that it all could be bolted together and taken apart. Because, you know, it's Maker Faire, so we've got to get everything from Rhode Island to New York to be able to do this. So everything has to fit in like 2 minivans. And so, you know, the hammock stands all had to be taken apart. So we built these hammock stands, and then we CNC cut sleigh frames that went around them to show it. And then we made a life-size CNC cut reindeer that sat in there. There were boulders that looked like rocks that were beanbags that people could sit on. We made a fake fireplace that people sat around and literally told campfire stories to each other, sitting in the middle of Maker Faire in front of a fake fire that was LEDs and a fan with sheets of paper that made the whole thing look like fire. But the hammocks themselves, we wanted it to not just be like white cotton canvas. We wanted them to actually look kind of, you know, part of the part. And so we found these kind of traditional, often knit patterns from the people of Lapland, Sami people, if I remember correctly, Sami. And we took these patterns and made blocks for these, and block printed all of our hammocks with these patterns. And it was all MDF CNC'd out to make the patterns, and, you know, roll the ink on it and then block print it. And it worked really well, and they turned out really great, and it was kind of our first experience doing block printing off of a CNC. And so I like this idea of pushing it even further. And, you talk about like registration and fixturing and everything else, I think you could easily do this with a couple, 1/4-inch steel pins, to make sure that you're always putting the block back in the same place. And, you'd definitely be off to the races of building this.
Oh yeah. But like, what I want to see is like a step farther of like people submitting pieces where they're recreating a traditional art concept on a digital machine. Because like what drives me insane is, and I know you get this. It's like so often people are like, you didn't make that, or like anybody could make that because you made it on a CNC machine, and it drives me nuts. And to be able to like completely recreate a traditional thing by programming and doing like all the digital fab stuff that we enjoy, and then have that show go around to regional fairs, like ship it and then have somebody handle it and set it up, and then it goes to the next one. And I think that would be really fun.
This was obviously like a lot of my inspiration of doing the Picasso, which is, I'm sure part of the reason why you bring this up is I wanted to take this idea of a machine drawing a portrait, a robot actually drawing a portrait, and a little bit of that artistic eye of like a caricatured artist, or how an artist would necessarily sketch somebody, and some of that kind of coming in of how the program is necessarily interpreting how someone looks. And obviously we can have someone go out and take a picture and then just print it on a normal printer. But I loved that idea of more like putting a pen in a robot's hand and having, an actual draw bot sit there and draw out an actual sketch, and not something that's just like pre-programmed and repeated over and over again. I still enjoy watching my Picasso and what it chooses to like sketch from everyone that goes and runs it. And I've run hundreds of sketches at this point through that machine.
Yeah, it's super cool. So, maybe we have the Digifab art show at some point.
Digifab art show, yeah. Or we just, get a gallery show somewhere.
That could happen. Like, we could do that.
Yeah,
I think we could.
I've been to enough gallery shows that were not as good, so.
It's a barrier breaker, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of interesting because I never thought I would consider myself in any way, shape, or form an artist. But the more I've kind of delved into the maker side of things and, been around other artists as part of that, the more I can say, like, oh, yeah, like, I have made art.
Oh, yeah.
And so, and I've done contribution things now that have been in museums and, things like that, so.
Yeah, that was fun seeing the Project Egress thing.
Yeah. I mean that was a fun one, but I mean, even before that, back when I was at Hack Pittsburgh, like I did stuff that showed in museums there. So
neat.
Yeah.
Well,
so
we are definitely at the podcasty time. Do you guys have other questions for Matt?
See, we didn't even get into what I thought we'd get into, and all the kind of exciting stuff that I had.
What did you want to get into?
Well, and I think we started to highlight some of it a little bit, even in our talk about CNC and everything else. But my role at Prusa is head of community, and the getting in and kind of talking about like where I think some of the community side of things really is affecting the maker world and how it's changing things, and getting my kind of rants out of why CNC is not as popular as 3D printing, and how I really see a lot of that as being kind of community focused and not necessarily technology focused. you know, I think everything that happened with you know, Thingiverse to begin with, and then later on Imagine and my mini factory, and you know, now like you know, Prusa printers, obviously, you know, the kind of culture of sharing that has come up in 3D printing has really pushed this to so much further than all of the other digital fabrication mediums have necessarily gone. And, you know, I talk to people all the time, and I often get, you know, as I'm in this rant, as you guys know, I have a tendency to show up places and rant about things. And now Aaron wants to build robot arms, and, you know, and, you know, other various things. But, you know, I talk to people about this, and they're like, oh, you know, CNC isn't popular because CNC's for, you know, old dudes doing woodworking, and, you know, it's a totally different market. And, you know, I kind of totally disagree in that. I think that CNC has not become as popular because there isn't that community around it that's largely focused towards the file sharing aspect of things.
Oh, yeah.
The ease of entry that you have in 3D printing of being able to go to Prusa printers, you know, Thingiverse, whatever, and download something and actually be able to make it is so much greater than, you know, obviously having to learn CAD and having to learn design and everything else. And, you know, I think that people have kind of missed out on that on the woodworking side and the CNC side of things, of, you know, having access to incredible designs that they can easily get a hold of and be able to create things. And
but even the laser community.
Yeah, absolutely.
People are
and that's
so guarded of their laser DXFs. It's crazy.
That's the dirty secret. Thingiverse was designed for a laser community. Like, that was the initial intention of
really?
Thingiverse. Yeah. Thingiverse predates MakerBot. Like, they were getting started on that so that they'd have a way that the people within NYC Resistor would be able to share their files easily that they were working on for their Epilogue laser that they had in the space. And other hacker spaces that were getting Epilogues or other lasers would easily be able to share, you know, files around. And then the same guys who were working on that also said, hey, we've got a laser cutter. Can we use our laser cutter to make a 3D printer? And they designed the cupcake so that they could cut it on the Epilogue. And the next thing they knew, they said, okay, well, you know, we obviously want people to be able to share files for 3D printing too, and that's where it all focused on.
I remember when there were more laser cutter files on Thingiverse than 3D printers.
Yeah, it's because, you know, Zach was just hanging out at NYC Resistor and laser cutting shit all the time. I forget that I'm allowed to swear on your podcast.
Oh God, yeah.
And so, you know, I'm on so many calls, and, you know, Shane making sure that everything stays family friendly on YouTube and everything else. That, you know, I forget that. Yeah, this is Makers on Tap. But anyways, yeah. So, you know, they were off laser cutting things like crazy, and, you know, I want to see that so desperately come to other sides of things. You know, I've had some discussion of let's get some of that stuff more on the Prusa printer side of things and stuff, but I see good reasons why not to have it, but also good reasons to have it too. But yeah, I want to encourage everyone out there who is working on CNC furniture or CNC, you know, other accessories around and everything else, of, like, you know, find ways to share out your files, like, get that stuff out there, because, you know, we can teach each other more by seeing each other's designs. Like me talking about, like, look at what Bill's doing on Instagram. Like, the inspiration side, I think, can still push some of these areas so much further than they are. And, you know, building communities of people who are actually interested in open source furniture. You know, Open Desk has now become Closed Desk. You know,
their security certificate's dead now.
Oh, is it?
I just tried to go to their site. You can't even get to the site.
Interesting.
Chrome won't even let me. It's like, hell no, you can't go there.
Yeah, that's relatively new. So
I was really excited for Open Desk. Like, that whole concept is really neat.
Absolutely.
It's really neat until they invoice your company for $5,000 just out of nowhere. That was cool.
What was that for?
They apparently somebody at our company called them and had a conversation, and they took that as like a consulting thing, and then they invoiced us for $5,000. And yeah, we just didn't pay that because there was never a discussion of money. But yeah, that was right around the time they took all their files down too. So, uh-oh. Matt's walking around and it got all choppy.
Where's he going?
Where's he going?
It's an adventure.
He's on a mission.
I see the Picasso.
Sorry about
The
that.
laptop's dying.
Yeah, my laptop was dying. Sorry, I had to run downstairs and plug in my laptop.
I was waiting for something.
Yeah.
Looked like an SNL opening.
Yeah, sorry. All of a sudden, everything became real jittery, and I'm like, "What's going on?" And yeah, my laptop was dying. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, OpenDesk had all kinds of great furniture, and I love that they had a concept that actually would help get everyone in the process paid. Right?
Yeah.
The fact that people who did. Yeah, but it's one of the things that we've often had problems with, even in the the 3D printing sharing world, which is how do we get designers paid and how do we get them paid well? Because design is important and it's a skill and things like that. But it doesn't always make sense to me that every design should necessarily always be paid. I think that. We had a lot of us through the process have given a lot back in and have kind of built on this like open free sharing thing that it really does frustrate me that sometimes you'll see someone who doesn't really have the design chops yet, doesn't have the skills or whatnot, but they design one simple little thing and they instantly head to My Mini Factory and put it up for sale for $5. And it's like, you probably figured out how to design that by the hundreds of things that you downloaded for free from Thingiverse and got the idea of how design for 3D printing works. But on the other hand, like manufacturing kind of changes things, and like manufacturing things for sale kind of changes things. And so that idea of like when 3D Hubs was around, I was never necessarily comfortable on the like, let me print something for you that you just downloaded from Thingiverse and send it on. But I think OpenDesk kind of had a little bit more of an open side of that of like, hey, if you order a piece of furniture through us, the person who makes the furniture is getting paid. We're getting paid a little bit, but the designer's getting paid also. So I appreciate that side of things. I just wish that they hadn't, in their process of screwing up their business, had not decided to take their ball and go home and take all their files down. So I think it's important that something else like that for the CNC world kind of comes back around, that there is some kind of way that people can share things, because again, I think a lot of us have grown on the backs of giants, of all the people that have taught us design for 3D printing or design for what other systems that we're using, based on seeing everybody else's work and projects. When I was teaching a 3D printing class at a trade school, that was one of the ways that I taught my students. Was every time we were kind of moving on to a new 3D printing technology, I had them start not by designing the first thing that they were going to print, but going out and downloading something from Thingiverse and then being able to print it. And, kind of saying, like, here are design constraints around this technology. FDM obviously was like, think about overhangs, think about, not having too many details in your print, things like that. So go find something that fits these constraints, and then print it and see how it comes out, and see if, your view of what the limitations of the hardware was, like, actually played out in the print. And then, then move on to go out and actually, download something, or design something instead of just downloading it. And hopefully the things that you learn from the things that you downloaded will, translate and correspond through.
Yeah. There's, I don't know. There's so much in all that. That's a whole podcast discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important that we keep a lot of this going. And it's one of my worries in the 3D printing world right now is because Thingiverse has become such the default and such the behemoth and everything,
but it doesn't work.
Well, it doesn't work. But this is one of my first rants that you guys, were exposed to, was even years ago. Me talking about Thingiverse is dying. We need to get away from Thingiverse and we need to move someplace else. And, it's one of the reasons why I'm on Joe's team is because he heard me kind of constantly out there saying we have to fix this and we have to find another home. And my worry isn't necessarily the side of oh, well, I'm not going to be able to download these things from Thingiverse. It's how much I personally think it will splinter the maker community when Thingiverse shuts down. And they can't access these things. And that it'll be very hard to put the genie back in the bottle if we haven't moved away from Thingiverse beforehand. It'll be very hard to put the genie back in the bottle of getting people back into sharing their designs and, sharing skills and knowledge with each other in these online communities that can be accessed so much more readily than, kind of anything else that's out there.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. I agree so much. I ripped my headphones out.
Yeah, everyone wants to go to bed. They're like, "Oh, we were ready to be done," and you start getting ranty again. But
well,
that's why I thought you wanted me on, was to be all ranty. So
next week.
Next week, should we just do the long running series of me just showing up and this is the problem with maker spaces today.
Yes. Yes.
And yeah,
we should have a Makerspace Presidents Unite podcast where we just get on and complain about makerspaces. We'll have you and Devin and me and Aaron.
There's a reason why I now live in Maine and have a garage and a basement full of equipment. And so I love the makerspace world, absolutely, but it has definitely changed from where it was 10 years ago when the dream started for me.
And you've changed, and the way you make change is...
Yeah, absolutely.
Makerspaces are still great, though.
Yeah.
We don't not love you. Just frustrated.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I still love makerspaces, and I still want to be around them and everything else, which is why I want to start to be able to travel again and go out and see the communities around and, interact with them, and back to my normal job at Prusa, building local meetup communities of people interested in 3D printing and working together. But the virus has us all at home.
Yeah. So I will say, the one interesting thing is, with OpenDesk, the Wayback Machine still has it archived a whole bunch of times.
But doesn't have the files.
Doesn't look like it has the files, but it does have the file names. Nothing ever goes away on the internet. So...
Yeah, it's getting a hold of some of those files, and unfortunately, and I think OpenDesk is actually a really good example of some of my worries that come to what happens when Thingiverse shuts down and things like that. I've gone through and tried to back find some of the files, and some of the OpenDesk files are oh, this was my graduate school in furniture design thesis project, and yeah, now I'm a professional designer out doing something else, and I don't care about this anymore, and I don't care about these files.
Yeah.
And so, we have lost furniture from Open Desk going down that will, never come back. And, some people say, oh, well, I've got everything. I can put up a torrent and, stuff like that. And it's like, well, but the efficacy of that to me is very questionable. Like, if you have that, I absolutely want it. Don't get me wrong, because I want those, I want those files. But on the other side, like, should it just be openly out there being shared and hosted in ways that the actual artists and creators don't have control of how their files are being shared is very questionable.
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
I don't know. All right, guys. I'm sorry for hijacking this at the end, but
Oh, not at all.
Oh, you're good, man. You're good.
We'll have to,
Yeah, we can make this a long running series.
we'll reconvene.
You're welcome back.
yeah, I mean, let me know, and we'll come back and we'll talk other stuff.
Absolutely.
All right.
So this was a nice way to spend a Saturday evening, and you guys didn't get nearly as drunk as I expected you to be. Like, I was totally hoping for drunk Aaron. So
I've gotten a lot better at that.
We have to see re-record Aaron. For a long time.
I don't know the Verf After Dark. Like, by the end of that, like, you were.
That was 6 hours.
Yeah, no, it was. Yeah, no, absolutely. But I was loving it. I was like, oh, I sent you a message, Joe. I was like, oh, Aaron's drunk. And it was awesome. It was great. So, yeah,
I was starting to build a bit of reputation for being super drunk on stream. So
Wrangle it in.
bit.
Just a tiny bit.
I get everybody from Tim's old stream. I'm like, oh, Aaron's streaming again.
All right, so before we leave, in the theme of like, this sucks that everything shut down, I do have a question for all of you guys, and I'm not taking the lowball answers of your show, Murph or Earth or anything, but what event are you excited about being able to go to again when we can have events again?
I am excited for the post lockdown makerspace party.
Definitely.
It's going to be a rager.
At your actual space?
Yes.
Yes. Like just everybody back together in person after however many months of only seeing their virtual faces.
I can tell you that every time I've
be
seen a
great.
makerspace person in person, behind a mask, that party's going to be interesting. I think there's that. There's the makeup Murph. And I know you said that was a lowball answer, but Murph is kind of my holy grail event every year. So that getting canceled was definitely a spirit. Damn it. It's not canceled. It's postponed. It was definitely a spirit killer.
Oh,
Even more than Makerfest, honestly. Like, Makerfest is our event, but it's not Murph. It's different. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like any con, any of the cons that I would get to go to. So, like, hopefully C2 will be the next one that I get to go to. We were actually potentially looking at going to Colossal Con, but we're gonna back off from that one because it's just too soon for that many people. But like costuming, cosplay, all that kind of stuff, that's my stuff. I love going to it. I love building stuff for it, and I love making stuff for it. And so for us to be able to like go out and do that and see all of our old friends, because we were all really excited for Star Wars Day, which is coming up, and we were going to be up in the largest gathering of all of them, like in the U.S., and we got invited to go with to the event because it is a invite only event, and we were super excited for that, but now we just don't get to. It got canceled. Like, sucks. So hopefully we'll just get to see some of those friends once everything reopens and gets to do all that. But yeah, I just want to see more friends, man. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really looking forward to potentially going to NomCon this year, and so I've yet to actually make it to NomCon.
Same.
And so I'm looking forward to that. And then, yeah, of course, getting out to some of the maker fairs and things, hoping that Milwaukee manages to find a way back and stuff like that. So,
is Orlando still on the board this year?
I don't know if he's taken it off yet. I really enjoyed Orlando last year. It felt a lot like a tiny version of Bay Area, largely because it was at like a fairgrounds kind of situation that's very like similar buildings but in smaller scale to Bay Area Maker Faire. Mm-hmm. But that's not rolling around till October. I don't know if Ian has canceled it yet or not. But I don't see myself going to anything this year.
Yeah.
So, we'll just have to see. So, but yeah, NomCon is because I haven't been to it. NomCon is a big one for me.
Yeah, I'd really like to go.
I really enjoyed it last year.
You went last year?
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah.
They're doing it virtual this year though, so
right. Yeah, I kind of screwed up and wasn't paying attention to put in to host a panel or talk or whatever for the virtual version. So I'm remiss on that, but I might beg and plead if there's any spots open and possibly see if I can con my way in with some potential sponsorship or something like that. So we'll see.
Nice.
So,
all
right, gentlemen.
Well, with that, guys, keep making stuff.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
It's the end of the podcast.